Now I'd like to invite our next panel, Platforming Young Voices, chaired by Emily Ball, who's the creative producer of Creative Youth Network, and artists Leeza Awojobi and Anna Rathbone and Brook Tate. One of the exciting things we're doing with Visual Arts Southwest is really analysing what the kind of youth offer, young persons offer is in the region. And working with Emily actually on the steering committee has been really inspiring to kind of understand actually how we can really cut through to thinking about actually what is critical for young people in the Southwest. So welcome and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Paula. We're going to start off by, first of all, I would just like to say a huge thank you. These three young people have all made commitments to be here today and taken time out of their lives. Personally, I've just found out, Brooke, you were due to be going to the march in 8 minutes' time and you've decided to be here with us. So that's huge. Thank you. So yes, I'm Emily Bull. I'm the creative producer for Creative Youth Network. We're based here in Bristol. We work with young people between the ages of 11 up to 25 to unlock their potential. The majority of those we work with, so last year we worked with about 6,000 young people and 80% of them come from marginalised or disadvantaged backgrounds. We support young emerging artists and we support young people with one-to-one support. So I'm here to facilitate. In fact, when we were planning today, we said, you know, what's the point of talking about young people? I'm 34, I am not young anymore. I'm here to question these guys because they're who you should be listening to. So that's enough from me. I'm going to pass over to you guys. Could we just start with a bit of an introduction? Who you are? Could you say your age and your background, where you're from?
Hi, I'm Leeza Awojobi. I'm 23 years old. I'm a poet, but love to respond to visual arts using words and stuff. And originally I'm from London, but I moved here 2 years ago.
I'm Anna Rathbone. I make stuff. Sometimes that's kind of theatre stuff, and sometimes that's visual stuff, and sometimes it's kind of somewhere there. And I'm from Coventry originally, but I moved to Bristol 6 years ago, and I'm 25. And I'm about to turn 26, so I think that means I'm going to emerge. Because there's this thing which is like, if you're between 16 and 25, then you're a young person and there's kind of a bit more support to do stuff. But you have to have it sorted by the time, you know, by the day before you're 26, because you've emerged by then, you know, by that time. So
I've emerged in August. I'm 26, and my name's Brook Tate, and I'm predominantly a painter, like a portrait painter. I do have some, just my lack of organisation. I was going to bring up my Instagram, but I'll do that in a minute, but is that okay? I do portrait painting and writing, and I compose music, and I'm working with the Bristol Old Vic, I've written 2 musicals at the Bristol Old Vic, based on books that I wrote for my nieces, for the last 5 years. But I still don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just sort of doing it. But I moved here to study nursing 3 years ago, but because of a painting that I did, and thanks a lot for Instagram, it sort of started the ball rolling. So a visual artist and writer kind of.
There's another member of our panel here today that you haven't introduced.
There's Martha the giraffe. She's just laying down on the floor, but I'll get her out as well at the end. But I've now spread into puppetry, because it's fun, because it's great. Now I've got a giraffe in my backpack and a zebra, so and I'll be taking them to the march because they're life-size giraffes and zebras. Fantastic. But I'll show you them in a minute.
It was really important. So we've had a couple of meetings. We hung out quite a bit in the last couple of weeks and kind of chatted about what we want to talk about today. And one of the things that was really prominent when we were chatting, and it was mentioned earlier today, I think a couple of times, that visual artists aren't always visual artists. They're not in that box. And there was a question that you had for me when we first met, is that we're talking at a Visual Arts Southwest day, a conference, but we don't see ourselves as visual artists. So it's really important to kind of share that, I think. Is there anything else before we get into the conversations about barriers and support and the provocations? Tell us a bit more about your practice. How have you got to where you are today?
I would say that there is support out there, definitely. I'm really glad to have been able to be supported by the Creative Youth Network. But at the same time, I think, as you mentioned, Brooke, earlier, that a lot of the time you just don't really know what you're doing, and you don't know if you're doing it right. You kind of feel as though you're on the outside in a strange way. And it's difficult to know how much of that is imposter syndrome and how much of it is actually true. So I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. Could you tell us a bit more about your work?
So my work is held together by a concept, Eyes and Oath, which raises questions about human nature so we can be understood. And basically what that means is that I'm really interested in sort of looking at what makes human beings tick, and actually when you peel back the layers of where we're from, where we've been and what we do, who are we at our core. And that comes out in various ways. I do performances, I've got an exhibition coming up, and also responding to visual art.
What? Brooke's trying to convince me.
I heard
to
Leeza do a spoken word one of her poems yesterday, and literally it's beautiful. And I was just like, just do a little bit tomorrow. So I don't know.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. She's great. She's beautiful.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah. Time. Okay, cool. And Anna, what's got you to where you are today?
There's not like one thing. I think there's luck, there's having had support from organisations in Bristol because of being a young person. So I've had support from Creative Youth Network. I've also had support from Rising Arts Agency. And I think all of us really want to talk about Rising, which is a fantastic Bristol-based organisation, because they're just great, and they've helped all of us in so many ways, and it's something that I think is so needed. And they so Kamina, it's run by Kamina Walton, based at Spike Island, and they put young people in touch with artist mentors in lots of different fields, and it's something that is so important and has been so important for all of us. So there's that.
Cool. And how about you, Brooke?
I'd say the support for young people, so organisations such as Rising and Prince's Trust, have been massive, huge platforms and springboards for me into landing in inboxes. Basically, I think if you've got as a young person, if you haven't got a connection. So I moved nursing and didn't know anyone, and working in a care home. And I got to know people at open mics and stuff for music, but with visual arts, it's like, oh, well, how do I get through those doors? And I submitted work to the RWA, and I'm hopefully getting an email today whether I've got a painting in, but I probably haven't, because for the last 3 years I haven't, so it's like I just burned my money. But yeah, so once you get turned away and something goes on your black CV, you're like, oh, well, I won't try there for the third, fourth time, because I can't afford it, and they obviously clearly don't like me. But places like Prince's Trust, Rising, the doors are open. You go in there, speak to someone older, like your mum's age, and you're like, help me, mum. And then, But I would say, I guess, as a visual artist, I would say Instagram. Can I whack my Instagram?
I don't know, can we do that? Yeah.
As a visual artist, as a young person, I feel like Instagram for me, and for poets, like I see poets and musicians on there, as a young person, if you can't get into a gallery, nowadays we all have our own gallery that we can curate, and we can reach out to a global audience in a way that no one has ever been able to do before in the past. And thanks. So I think without my Instagram account, I would never have. I would be still work. Not that I didn't like working in a care home. I love working in the care home, but as in I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing now without Instagram and without people. So because it's really easy to just use, and I could just send my link across. This was the painting that I did. Does it come out? No. So I just did a painting two Aprils ago, and I put that on Instagram while I was working at a care home, and then it rolled the recognition that I got from friends and just people commenting and people messaging and saying, can I have a copy of that? I really like that. Who is it? And it was a girl I met that's now one of my very close friends at Malcolm X Centre. It was maybe I don't need the RWA to hang me on their wall. I can just put it on Instagram. But that means that you then sometimes disconnect from, you don't have the same community because, whoops, that's Martha. So then I just carried on painting my friends. This man wasn't my friend, but he was a lovely man that I met in India. But and I was I'll just shove them all on Instagram. So if it wasn't for the platforms that we have as young people, with Facebook and Instagram, and then rising in partnership with Prince's Trust, a young person like us, but it's still so hard. It's still right, a couple of months ago, I was right, well, I don't know what I'm doing now. I'll just have to go and get another job. And then, it's just you're trying to do all this stuff and making these connections. And then, even then, it's well, I'll just try and apply for another job or something, or submit to another gallery that I don't really have the money to pay for. Anyway, I'm sit down again.
It's good. That actually brings us really nicely onto the point of conversation that we were going to chat about, the challenges. So when we first met, and just to act as a bit of a prompt that we can go off on that, there were things such as for young people that haven't gone through formal education, i.e. degrees, people that are 25 plus, having it all sorted by the time that you're 26. Applications, the formats of applications. Go to town on that one, guys. And access to networks. What do we think? What are the challenges? In no particular order.
I think there are definitely quite a few challenges. Thinking particularly about applications and just how accessible language is, and how that might be a barrier to people who haven't received a university degree, and also how much value as a sector we place on formal education. That can be quite challenging for somebody who perhaps nobody in their family went to university, or they don't know the technical terms of X, Y, and Z to do with painting and all whatnot, and that could that be a discouragement for them, because as well as the external things that we have to face, there's also the internal challenges, and just how accessible applications are as well to differently abled people. I think you mentioned that before.
Yeah.
When we were talking.
I mean, well, to talk about language, I think it's the kinds of language that we use in the arts are very exclusive, but if you're inside it, you maybe don't recognise that they're exclusive because you've learned to speak the language. And that's from information about, exhibitions that are on websites that are written in this kind of art speak that just completely goes over my head, to the language that you have to be able to speak to respond to a brief, or to be able to show that you can use when talking about your own work or other people's work. It's a kind of currency, and I don't think that it's, I don't think
I think it's easy to forget that when you speak it. I don't have a degree in anything. I don't speak arts language. I didn't get to spend 3 years making stuff and contextualizing my work and learning about art history or whatever. That's never been a thing really open to me. So in a lot of situations, within arts stuff, I kind of feel like I'm already 10 steps behind because I don't speak the language and I don't understand the expectations. Another thing I'd say about talking about applications, and that applications for jobs or for briefs or whatever, that's when the applications are actually out there and it's not just someone giving a job to their friends. They're so often done so inaccessibly, and I'm talking about the whole application process. I'm someone that's really interested in access and inclusion, but that sadly comes from a place of having often been excluded by systems that there are. So just a really easy example is having to not being able to submit an application as a video, for example. And I've been lucky recently that I've applied for things and that has been an option. So I don't have to spend painful hours and 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 hours of my life trying to get thoughts and words into the right order. I can just do it and say it, because having to do application cover letters and application forms is it's such a barrier for me. Whereas if I can just do a video where I do the talking and send that, it takes me probably less than a quarter of the time than it would to do a written application. And that doesn't mean it's any different in quality. It's the same information. It's just a much more accessible way for me to be able to do that. And there are so many ways of making applications and application processes more accessible. It's the same with interviews. And I think we have and this is across, this isn't just the arts, this is lots of, you go for an interview anywhere and we have a kind of idea about what a job interview is and this is how it works, but you don't think about who is excluded by that and what the format of an interview is. And so I'm going to go off. Come talk to me after about making interviews more accessible, because I can go on about it for hours. And like I said, that's for the jobs that are actually advertised. And you don't just get because you know someone, which is a whole other kettle of fish, can of worms.
I'll take up on the thumb that Anna just gestured to me, because the discussions that we've been having, I would say that I love networking. I love chatting, and my dad's got the gift of the gab, and I feel like he's like Del Boy, and I'm like, chat, and then through that, my network in Bristol very quickly has spread so quickly in different directions, and I've been able to meet people, and I've found out opportunities, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go for that, because I've met people and I've made friends with them, or got their email, or at their Facebook, and just chatty and put a smiley face and a kiss on the end of emails, and like ha ha ha, and then they're like, oh, okay, well, here's this opportunity, and actually it's a decent opportunity, Brooke, you should try that. But all of that comes from maybe just my natural bumbliness, and there's a little conversation that's happened. Whereas the conversations that we've been saying with Anna, if you're not like that, if you're quite an introverted person, if I was like my mum, I wouldn't be like that at all. And you said that you're in that position where it's like you wouldn't want to go and talk to. It's like if everyone came up and was like, oh yeah, hi, right, here's my email, let's add on Facebook. Like, I'm going to the canteen later, do you want to come? Whereas you.
Some of us are never going to be good at networking. I appreciate it is a skill, but some of us will never be good at it. And I think when you've got entire industries that are based on being able to do this incredibly socially complex thing over and over and over and over again, that's a massive exclusive thing. And when you're on the inside, you might not realize that because you're surrounded by other people who are good at talking and good at networking and good at having those conversations and meeting people. Some of us just can't do that. And that doesn't, that is separate to the quality of the work that I do, you know? I'm good at what I do. I'm just not good at telling other people that I'm good at what I do in big rooms, or, you know, making those kind of, you know, connections. Like, I just can't do it. But that means, again, I'm instantly at a disadvantage.
But you're doing it very well now.
Very well.
Yes.
In fact, Anna said to me this morning when we walked through the door, she said, I'm going to introduce myself as Anna, and I don't like to talk to people. But you're sat in front of a room of people talking, so well done.
I mean, it's not that I don't like to talk to people. If I'm like running a workshop, if I'm doing the things that I'm comfortable with doing and that I'm good at doing, I love working with people. I just don't like this whole really difficult social thing that you have to do first, that if you can't do, it means you'll never get in.
And you know what, something that I would just like to champion is that I think you're really good at this because you feel really passionately about this. And I would, one of the things that we'll come on to in a second about provocations, if I forget, remind me of that, because there's something there that I'd like to provoke everyone to think about. How about you, Leeza? I'm going to come back to you and finish off the challenges and barriers.
Yeah, I think just following on from Anna's point, what I would also say is that I think we need to reframe how we view potential and who we kind of look out for in a social situation or at a networking event as somebody who we could potentially work with, or just has this thing that then draws us to them. I think everyone should be willing to some degree step outside their comfort zone and speak to people who perhaps don't necessarily look like them, or don't have the same, I don't know how to really explain it, but I think what often happens, as you were explaining, Anna, is that at these networking events, people just are really chatty, they're talking to each other, and then those people who perhaps don't feel as confident, or not necessarily because of that reason, they just don't really like networking that much, their potential gets missed, and it then becomes like a circular thing. It's like we're only drawing in like really confident, bubbly people, when actually we need to see potential in everyone.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay. Okay.
I just like another barrier that I would say is a big one for me is I think if you've come from a small town and you're not used to big buildings, I think architecture is massively intimidating for me. Like, say, like with the RWA, and I met a lady, I don't know if she's here, Helen Jacobs from the RWA. No, she was saying that she works in engagement, and the front of the RWA doesn't say that it's a gallery. There's no sign to say that it's a gallery. It's only the school next to it that says art gallery or art school or something like that. And then the exhibitions in there aren't free, and I just think it's such a. I volunteered, and I still volunteer now and then at a refugee centre in St Paul's, and I was teaching art, like little bits of art workshops, and I was teaching a 24-year-old and a 28-year-old from Eritrea, and just teaching like shading and like drawing bits and bobs, then mixing black and white, and then when it came to making colours like red, yellow, and green, and red, yellow, and blue. And then I mixed yellow and blue together, and we made green. And they were like, oh my, like they were so shocked by the fact that they'd made green. And they were 28 and 24, and I was like, and it made me just like feel a bit like, oh God, that's really awful. And I felt really, really bad. And I was like, oh yeah, and this makes orange. And it was so emotional. And then afterwards, I had to call my mum, and I was like really like emotional afterwards. And I was like, these are 24-year-olds and a 24-year-old and a 28-year-old guy who have come from Eritrea through horrific circumstances, and they've never had paint to play with. They've never used that, and it's just like we have that in this country, in this part of the world. We have that from when we're like 3, and what an advantage that is to have that. And then. I was just, and then by the end of like 2 months, we had this wonderful exhibition, and they were doing like pointillism and like, as in like doing loads of pictures like dots, like mixing all colours together and learning about colour theory. And this one, the 24-year-old, was so into it by the end of it. And I was like, just have all the paint, keep all the paint. And that was back in Hastings. And then to think how sad that is that's the case in the first place. But then there's still institutions now that aren't telling people where the art is, not making the building welcoming, and aren't free. When there are people in this country who've never mixed paint before. We've grown up so privileged, and there are still people deciding that that's right. It's art. Those artists, the artists that made the exhibitions, would probably love those people to go and see it for free, and give them a free sandwich as well. But so why is it that there are? I know obviously that people have to pay and support. So if you can, so like with the theatre shows that I'm doing at the Old Vic. I like make little CDs and just put them out and put a little cup and say, take them or pay what you feel. And I feel like pay what you feel. And then I'm amazed when people give me like a tenner or like, I'm like, God, well, I'd only charge like £2 or something if I was going to put a price on it. But people that are willing to pay will pay. I think there needs to be a shift in the pricing of exhibitions or art spaces. And like with the Bristol Old Vic, like the reason I stumbled into that was because it was when it was having a refurb. So it wasn't intimidating. The foyer was the backstage bar. So it's like grime. It wasn't grimy. Sorry if there's anyone here. It wasn't grimy. It was just like rough and ready sort of thing. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, there's an opening. I'll submit my nieces this story that I wrote for my nieces. Whereas now it's this great. It's beautiful. It's lovely. But is there anyone here from the Old Vic? If there is, it doesn't matter. Without that place, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
If you can't see yourself there, you're not going to put yourself there.
Exactly. Like, there's reserved signs on tables now and then. The price of the drinks is very expensive. The price of the food is very expensive. There is, like, contention between the financial team that are trying to make money and then the artists team. But, like, I would never have submitted, I don't think I would have had the confidence to submit the things that have now led to what potentially is my career. That giraffe wouldn't exist, for example, and that's changed my life. Like, because of the fact that the building is not welcoming, and that's a physical barrier to me, because in my head I'm like, oh gosh, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, like, so why should I go there? So, like, yeah, I would say the buildings themselves can be and the way it's set up, a massive barrier. On top of your own barriers in your head.
There's so many. I feel like we could talk all day about just the barriers, but can I put the question of the hour to you? So the question that we've been stumbling over is for young people, and of course you are 3 young people, and just to put this into perspective, at Creative Youth Network we did a big survey at the start of the year, and 33%, so a third of the population just of Bristol, are young people. So this is a huge part of our community that we need to listen to. So on behalf of all of them, what is the state of visual arts?
My response to this question before has been, I don't know because I'm not part of it.
It's pretty impressive to hear that, I think. I asked all of them to be as honest as possible today whilst being in a room full of lots of influencers, key decision makers, funders, curators, people that potentially can employ them, but they're being honest.
I would say, go on, Leeza. No, I've talked for ages.
I need to still think. I still need to do some thinking.
Okay. Well, I talk without thinking, so I'll go. I would say, on like a reflection, I think me and like Anna are just a reflection of two like ends of the scale. I would say I feel very much part of it, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the state is, and I don't think because I feel so much part of it because I'm making stuff, and I like the speakers were saying before. If you're going to make something, you make it. Like, you don't sit around waiting thinking, when's someone going to make me make something? If you're going to make stuff, you just make it. You can't stop that. And I think that's the positive. I'm very much let's view positively, even in the face of like with what's going on now. It's like, yeah, this situation, knows what the hell is going to happen. And there's a beautiful, this is very depressing. There's a beautiful bit of graffiti on a roundabout in Easton now, and it says, oh God, it's actually really sad, but it's good, and it helps me. It says, death is only the end if you assume the story is all about you. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's the point. That's where I'm going to hold it. And it's like, for my nieces now, it's like,
are you talking about climate change?
I'm talking about climate change.
Sorry,
yeah.
I haven't.
Sorry,
I haven't
but it's
seen
in, like,
the link.
in the face of that, it's like, well, you either give up and you just stop making anything because, yeah, what's the point? Or it's like, well, no, there are still children around, and children need to be happy and they need to play just as much as, and we do too. So making this giraffe thing on a stick, on a tent pole, and actually, I took it to Shambhala and seeing the reaction that people, like adults, had to this giraffe on a stick. And I'm like, it's an old curtain that I've painted as a giraffe. And people were stroking it, kissing it. Granted, probably some of them are off their face. But in the daytime, they really were. And there's this real positive thing. And it's not, what's the state of the arts? What's the state of the artists and people? I think the state of people being at there. And then I took it to Minor Park when there was a little picnic on. And people are so lovely. Like, I think there's a point, like with Brexit, with Donald Trump, with climate change, we're all just horrible things. But then actually this giraffe has become like a loveliness honeypot. And I'm like, oh, people are so lovely.
But you feel part of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not even sure, I can't even see what it is. And I think maybe that's the difference, is that you can kind of, you are able to connect with people in a different way to what I am, and you're able to, feel part of something, whereas I just feel excluded by the language and excluded by the expectations, and just so far away from it. It's like this big wall, and there's all this art world on the other side, and it's not because I don't make anything. Like, I make stuff all the time.
So you're in a good, like, the state of you as an artist is great in a way, because you're making loads. The state of, that's how I'm seeing it, like the state of artists, we're all doing great, we're all fine, and there's loads of people in here, we're making glass, we're making exhibitions at the Unfinished, like we're still making stuff. The state of artists, I think, is great. It's the state of the institutions, or it's the state of the structure.
Yeah. I would also say that I think the state of the visual arts, it's becoming increasingly diverse, even if it's very incrementally. However, there's still not much integration. So I had the privilege of being part of an exhibition earlier this year called Why Are We Not Here?, looking at the representation of BAME artists in Bristol. And it was a really good turnout to the exhibition launch. And yet we had a good time, and we had discussions and workshops. But I noticed that with a lot of the workshops, actually no, I only attended 2, I think. I didn't see any non-black people there, and I wondered why that was the case. I wondered, was it that perhaps non-black people or white people might have felt uncomfortable, or perhaps felt like their presence wasn't needed or something, or that this was a discussion just for BAME artists. I wondered if that was the case. And I still think that even though we talk about diversity and it's the new buzzword, it's the word that we use now, I think integration should also be as much as a priority, and not just in terms of cultural or ethnic backgrounds, but I think as well across the political spectrum, there is the assumption that the arts is very sort of left-leaning and liberal, and I think that for perhaps people who are religious or come from have a different worldview, might also not feel as though the place is necessarily for them as well, or perhaps their voice isn't valued in the same way. And that's a very, that's a very tricky, conversation to have in how do we move towards integration things which are, so can be so divisive and, polemic.
Thank you. We're nearing the end of our discussion, so I'm going to end with one thing, and again, this is a big one, so I'll give you some time to think because I've remembered mine. Whilst we're sat at the front, we're the ones with the microphones, and people are listening to us and mainly to you. If one thing could change to provide access to young people, emerging young artists in the visual arts, what would you change? Mine is to listen, and I don't mean to hear, I mean to listen. I hope that everybody in this room has done that today. It's a really key skill that I learnt when I was being trained to be a youth worker, to be able to work with young people. And it's where you're not thinking about your answer, you're not thinking about what you would do, you're not thinking about your body, you're listening. And I really hope that everyone's really listened to these guys today, because there's been so much that even if we were to just take one of your ideas and change that, that could mean so much for the state of the visual arts. How about you guys? What's your one provocation?
I think just accept that in order to move forward and to have a more inclusive and integrated art sector, it's going to involve feeling uncomfortable at times. You're going to find out things about yourself or your colleagues or people you work with that are just really difficult to face. And I think just from the onset, knowing that that's going to happen and being willing to push through that and being willing to accept that actually, this is uncomfortable. Yeah, there are no black people here, or there are no Asians here. Okay, that's really how we're going to do this. It's just a really good place to start.
Sorry, there's not one thing. Briefly, something about how, people come to things at different times in their life, and someone trying to start a career in the visual arts, it may not happen when they're 23. It might happen when they're 47, and that doesn't mean that's less valid. And I spent a lot of my time, aged 16 to 25, being either at school or ill. And so it's only in the past, I feel like I've had my last year of, my kind of 18 months of actually being able to take up opportunities that are there for young people, because I've come to it slightly later. And that's not my fault. That's not because I wasn't organised enough when I was 18 to be right, my career and these things that I need to be able to, these opportunities that I need to be able to take while I'm young enough, So I think there's something to do with supporting artists who are at, the beginnings and the early stages of their careers, however old they are and wherever they're coming from, and whatever their situation is. And I think also we sometimes need to just think about things differently. And an example that I've thought of being here today is an event like this could really easily be captioned. And that would make the event more accessible, live captioned. That would make the event more accessible to anyone with a hearing impairment, anyone who's deaf, anyone for whom English is their second language, people who just take in information a bit easier if they've got that that as well. And then what you get as well is a transcript of the event. So you get a recording, a literal word-for-word recording of all the conversations, that take place on this table. But if we don't think about doing things like that, and that that's an access thing, but that actually then helps so many more people than just the deaf people in the room, or who aren't in the room because they couldn't come in the room because it's not captioned. Sometimes we just need to think about this differently, and because back to networking, we're not going to have neurodiversity in the arts if we only give jobs to people that we think are friendly, because friendly looks different and some of us express ourselves differently.
And last but by no means least, Brooke, what's your thing?
I'll tag on to the last word, like friendly. I would say, like going to having like carried paintings to galleries and saying, "Oh, this is my work," or because they won't look at it on an email or something like this, and then getting a very serious face, particularly in Bath, very serious face, and sort of like no smile. I would say there's not a lot of smiling when you meet the gatekeepers to organisations. Sometimes you're like, "Oh, sorry, yeah, no, I'll stop smiling as well. No, I'm not happy either." No, but as in, I would say it'd be great. I mean, I've had a bit more time to think about it, so I'm like, "Oh, I'm planning this whole event, this whole new thing." But as in, like, so the refugee centre that I volunteer at called Borderlands in St Paul's. If you go there on a Monday or Tuesday, it's a drop-in centre, and there's Bristol Refugee Rights on a Wednesday and Thursday, I think, in Malcolm X Centre, and there's BHN. Like, if you were to go to, if you run an organisation or if you head a team, I feel like if you're a team leader in like any organisation, not just an arts organisation, there should be a thing where they have one. If you head up a team, or if you're a director of an organisation, go and visit a drop-in centre for a refugee centre or a homeless shelter or a mother's support group or refugee women of Bristol group, and just go there, and because they're drop-in centres, just email them and say, "Hi, can I come along and drop in? Can I just spend some time there?" And see the procedures that they go through, because at this refugee centre, I mean, I'm bad with names, but the drop-in managers that are there every week, they know everyone's name. Like, within a couple of weeks, they make it their goal to know everyone's name, and they're welcoming. "Do you want a cup of tea? Here's my handshake." Both hands, shake the hand. And it's like, it's because those people that are coming through those doors are vulnerable, but we are all vulnerable. We're all vulnerable in some way. So if you are greeting your staff, because there are some institutions where people work with team, like I heard there's people that have been working in the same team for 10 years, and the director that's in these team meetings every week still doesn't know their name. It's like 10 years, and you don't know this person's name who is a core member of your staff. Know their name and smile at them and shake their hand, say hello to them and say good morning, so-and-so, on the way down the stairs, because those things will infiltrate the whole heart and the pulse and the veins and the arteries of these organisations. And then one day someone will go, "Why don't we just make everything free?" I think that's right. We can't ask everyone to make everything free, but we can ask people to smile and shake each other's hands and know each other's names and like really care about each other
and make people feel welcome.
Yeah, and that
at the moment I don't.
That includes sign language. That include like what you were saying, I think, and then that will spread onto in inclusion, not just diversity. Stop talking about diversity. Start talking about inclusion, because I have to think, "Oh well, I'm gay. Does that mean make me diverse?" And that's why I don't go to the BAME events, because I'm like, well, that's not my. Whereas if it was inclusion, talking about inclusion, then I'd be like, yeah, and not inclusion. What's it called? Integration. I don't even know the word. Like integration. Then it's like, yeah, well, we are all involved in integration, so just be nice.
Great, thank you so much. And if this isn't a proof of what happens when you ask young people to come to the table and talk, I don't know what is. So thank you all, and they're here for the rest of the day. So if you have any questions, come and grab them over lunch.